and the owner of the restaurant doesn't like the color of the T-shirt I'm wearing, so he yells at me to get the hell out.
Ooh,
That's
straight
Trench
to it.
Crusade for me.
Well, straight to it then. Straight to it then, huh? Welcome to Pint Cellar, everyone. I'm Jarvis, and I'm joined with Hubrecht. How's it going, sir?
It's going wonderful, Lewis. Thank you for having me again. It's an honor as always. And boy, do we have a subject for you today.
Yeah, we are. And get right to it, I guess. We're getting right into it because this is something that I have a both love and hate relationship with, but I also find it too interesting to just ignore. So, yeah, we're talking about Trench Crusade today. And you know what? Before we get into the meat of it, before we give our thoughts about it, maybe we should tell the audience just what the hell Trench Crusade is, yeah?
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
So, Trench Crusade, for the audience who don't know, is a Kickstarter tabletop war game set in alternate 1914, where humanity is at war with the forces of hell. And in this universe, during the era of the First Crusade, the Knights Templar have actually opened a portal to hell within Jerusalem. And from this, humanity and Earth is in apocalyptic warfare against the forces of hell. Why did I say that again?
So basically, like real life. If you ask any Catholic, that is.
Yeah, but you know, a literal portal has been opened into hell and within a spark of reality.
We have guns and battle lines and barbed wire, all the paraphernalia.
Yeah, and you know, I will say now, I really do like the presentation of Trench Crusade. Like, I really like the World War I horror mixed with medieval Catholicism. I think it makes for a very visually impressive setting within Trench Crusade. And I especially like the models that they have. I think they look really cool. And yeah, for a Kickstarter, this is really impressive stuff. Though before we get into like specifics about like factions and such, I am curious as to your thoughts about it, Hubrecht. So what are your thoughts on Trench Crusade?
French Crusade for me is the equivalent of me walking down the street and seeing this billboard of a restaurant saying we have the world's greatest burgers, right?
Oh,
So then I go into the restaurant and I order myself one of those world's greatest burgers, and only to find out that I have the burger was mid, was like
oh,
mid at best, and the owner of the restaurant doesn't like the color of the T-shirt I'm wearing, so he yells at me to get the hell out.
ooh,
That's
straight
Trench
to it.
Crusade for me.
Well, straight to it then. Straight to it then, huh?
Okay, no. I'm gonna be a bit fairer than that. I'm not just going to
Okay.
go on a full vitriolic rant, right? So, Trench Crusade is Trench Crusade for me is a definition of a wasted potential franchise. And why am
Okay.
I saying that? Because everything about Trench Crusade seems to be tailor-made for us, tailor-made for us. World War One, I
Oh
honestly
yeah.
like World War One history more than World War Two history by far.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, medieval Catholicism, and two
Mm.
Catholics are saying that.
This
Um,
video is called Catholics Review Trench Crusade. And I'm not just saying, oh, trad, what's it called? Trad caths? No, we're not
yeah.
that. I'm just saying that's a dumb internet thing. It's no different from like pseudo Vikings who think like, oh, I worship Thor. No, you don't, buddy. You listen to Sabaton songs. Um, but no, you are right. It's something appealing towards an audience like that. Alternate history, World War One, medieval Catholicism. It looks really cool. But at the same time, they don't want to attract that kind of audience. So it's like, what's the point?
Which is the most retarded thing imaginable. Like, okay, no, look, no, I'm gonna go with the positives before I start going at it. But
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, it has very beautiful, very disturbing, very grim art.
Hmm.
You can see the 40k DNA in it all over the place, as much as they want to deny it and be like, "Oh, we don't have nothing to do with 40k." It's basically,
They
40k
have
just with like with World War One uh,
they
aesthetics.
they have Games Workshop writers like Graham McNeil attached to the project writing lore. It's like you guys have some bit of soul within 40k in you, and that's okay. The inspiration of
Yeah, but
40k is awesome.
to me, when I saw it, it was like, oh, it's 40k, but not in space. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah,
You
alternate
know,
40k. Yeah, I would call it that.
yeah, little alternate 40k, like, but not. It's not in space. It's in
Hmm.
1914, right? And let's be clear, like, in case you're an idiot and haven't noticed, like, 40k, especially the Imperial Guard, has a lot of World War One DNA and how they
Hmm.
fight, how they look, how they organize, and you go even further into the Death Corps of Krieg, then it's even more obvious. So
Hmm.
yeah, so for the one person that's going to be a contrarian and say, "Oh, well, it has nothing to do with it," shut the fuck up. Of course it is. Um, okay, and the art is beautiful in a disturbing, freaky way. Some people
Hmm.
saying, "Oh, it's more grim art than 14K." I actually disagree with that. Just because your art is grim and kind of disturbing doesn't mean that the universe reflects that, or at least tonally in a narrative sense.
Yeah, there's
You're gonna
definitely
hear
stuff.
why in a bit.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear why in a bit.
Hmm.
Um, and oh, you mean that there's actually gonna be a miniature game of this? This looks actually pretty cool. Let's check it out. And there was this months ago. I don't remember if it was a year ago or months ago, but where kind of like Trench Crusade kind of took off as as a trending topic, and a lot of new interested people flocked to it.
Yeah, I was
And
there.
we discovered, so was I. And only for the people's huge disappointment that there's not even an actual game. You just have a couple of, essentially, have a Kickstarter, some beta rules, and concept art. And only to find out that the people running it are idiots and assholes, basically.
Was more vicious than idiot and aggressive idiot.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing is that because what we're talking about is that when it's I think this was a year ago in which Sean was saying if you think 40k is a bit weird at the moment, then there's an alternative called Trench Crusade. Here's a Kickstarter page. And we need to understand too that Trench Crusade is technically still coming. Like they're going to have models available for people to buy, and there is like a date where it's like, yeah, everything's published. Here's a physical rule book you can buy. Here's like physical models you can buy
Yeah.
off us, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
that that
I'm gonna. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. I just going to say they have a very successful Kickstarter, which
mhm.
congratulations to them. Although I just want to add that that's not an indication of the future success of Trench Crusade as a game or even as a franchise, simply because of the fact that I can tell you from experience, as someone who has backed several Kickstarters that are successful. I remember I once backed a Hellboy module for D&D 5e, and the
Okay.
Kickstarter was successful. I got my book and the things that I ordered as a backer of this project. And like 3 months later, the company that made the thing broke.
Oh
Like it
man.
went bankrupt. So just gonna say, uh, having a successful Kickstarter is not an actual indication that your product will be successful. Just gonna add that there,
Yeah, I
add
think
that in
people
there.
need to understand just because you got the money that you need, right? You still need to use it, right? And you still need the experience and practice to actually make use of it, right?
Mhm.
Like you said, it can still collapse on itself. So that's
Definitely.
so people were like, oh, you don't like Trench Crusade? Well, look how successful it's become. It's like, yeah, right now it is. I'm just wondering about long term.
Yeah, right now it seems like it. And do not misunderstand me. I don't think I'm so spiteful that I wish well, I don't know. Part of me, we haven't really even gotten to the reason that we're kind of, um, have a love hate relationship. Well, you is love hate,
Mhm.
mine is more like hate. Uh, but part of me is kind of indecisive of whether I should be completely spiteful and vindictive and wish for them to fail, or should I, be the bigger man and be like, I kind of hate them, but that doesn't mean I want them to fail. But honestly, I'm kind of like in the fence about it. I really don't know. Okay, what happened here, or do you want to say it, Lewis?
No, you can say it. You can say it.
Right. What happened here is that, to make a long story short, because this is not a drama podcast. We're not going to go into that. There was when Trench Crusade went trending, there was this controversy in which, um, well, people flocked to the server that the Trench Crusade socials linked to.
Hmm.
Apparently, it was not a server that was owned by Trench Crusade. It was by uh, by a magazine that whose name I don't remember, but what I do remember is that apparently is like the most layman game magazine and all the miniature hobby. So there, so like there's no much to talk about there, but so, people started making there's people started interacting with it, making lore theories, making memes, whatever. And people started getting banned from the server for that, or for vibes.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It was also pretty like their idea of bad vibes was like pretty low too, or it's like, oh, if you go beyond this very low line, you're banned. Because we actually
yeah,
have someone we know who was actually on the server, Lady Runeson, and because she gave this offer, like this idea about like it's sort of him that would be fitting for a saying like Trench Crusade, like war him that the church in this world would create for something like a saying that they're in, right? And they're like,
yeah.
no, why would we talk about religion? What do you mean why we would talk about
My
religion?
guy, what do you mean we don't talk about religion? You're using real world religions in
Yeah,
your franchise.
it's like,
Like that. This is the most outrageously stupid thing imaginable. Like, I cannot even believe these people have any skill to do anything. What do you mean you're creating a fictional franchise using real world religions, and you are surprised when when those real world religions, which are not some, small cult, but they're the two biggest religions in the world. One of them
mm-hmm,
is the biggest religion in history.
mm-hmm.
Show interested in it. Like, are you retarded? Because that's the only real explanation there.
No, it's
Like,
not being retarded because being retarded means you're born that way, right? What we
okay,
mean is
fair enough.
spiteful idiot, right? It's very a
Yeah.
person's very spiteful, but also they're stupid in their decision making. But I'm just going to say, right, if you're getting involved with something like religion and a sort of writing that you're doing, especially Christianity, and let's take other franchises, for example, like Castlevania and Dante's Inferno. We're talking about the video games here, right? Um,
Mhm.
Even though the devs behind those games might be atheists in personal lives, but I don't really know these people, but let's say they are because it's the video game industry. At least when they tackled the subject of Christianity and the whole core and heart of Christianity, like, forgiveness and love from God, even though they don't really go too in depth with something like that, they at least tackled it with dignity and at least put some effort into it because they kind of realized they can't just not have that in their game when their game is centered around that. Because especially something like Castlevania, Lords of Shadow, and yeah, Dante's Inferno, the game, they talk about the core message of Christianity because that's part of the world.
Yeah,
That's
it's
kind of
very.
it's a responsible, not, I don't want to say responsibility, but it's something that you put yourself into that you would have to talk about. So It's no different in Trench Crusade, and eventually you might need to talk about it if you want to explore it in books or something, but you just can't say no. It's like, well, you put yourself in a situation where you have to, man.
To me, this is a situation which I think that these people are so deluded. They have pretty much deluded to sell themselves into thinking that, gaming spaces are, belong to Reddit atheists that are never going to, speak up about the depiction of certain real world religions you're using in your game. You know what I mean?
Or maybe
Like,
in their idea, it's no different but from using Greek mythology and using it wherever you want and thinking you can just apply that with real world religions. But
well, that's
however,
actually stupid. That's
and here's
actually
the thing,
stupid
they can
because
probably think that towards Christianity, but they won't think that towards Islam because, like, buddy, you just can't think that way towards someone's religion.
it's
What?
Islamophobic.
Buddy, you just can't view it as something lower than you, man. But what about Christianity? I hate it. You see what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah.
I have
Honestly, yeah, it's a brain dead move. It's literally very tone deaf. It's like when you use an actual religion in a fictional setting and you have like this surprise reaction that the people of that religion was just so happens to be the biggest religion in the world and the most impactful in all of history.
like it or not, it
Show
is the most
either
impactful in
interest.
history.
Which one?
Sorry, like it or not, especially something like Catholicism, if like it or not, people, I'm just saying they have the biggest impact, right, in history, or at least quote unquote modern history in the past 2,000 years. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and the thing is, and you're acting surprised that you attracted the attention of the practitioners of said religion.
Yes.
Like, I remember when I was still excited for Trench Crusade, and I showed the Iron Sultanate to Badger, which is the Islamic faction, and he was like saying he was very excited because it
Yeah.
looked awesome, it looked metal, and I was thinking the same thing but in the in the vein of our guys. But of course the inevitable came, because that's just how it is. Do you want to say it, or should I say it?
What are you going to say? Because I don't know what you were going to say. What are you going to say?
The church is evil.
Now, let me make this argument, right? Let me be fair in something like Trench Crusade. What if it's not evil, but humanity is nuts? Like, I'm just saying, but
Yeah.
because something like the portal of hell has been opened, and the saying is supposed to be in this book of Revelation, sort of apocalypse, right? Let's imagine humanity at this point. It's not like they can't be gentle with things. They have to go to the extremes in a lot of their decision makings in life going forward. And so up to the point of 1914, humanity is nuts.
Yeah, like that's a very good explanation. But the guy saying, but the developers weren't all like saying, well, everyone is evil, and everyone, and anyone with a couple of neurons in their head was just like, I beg your pardon.
But it's like,
Did
what
you
comes
just
to
pull the
question?
everyone
What
is
is
evil? Did you just pull the everyone is actually evil card in a setting where the literal forces of hell are invading and, desecrating everything? I'm sorry, but that's an oxymoron, that's
You see,
like, you can say that the human factions are imperfect, but imperfect, flawed maybe. But saying that, oh, they're all evil when the comparison is literal Satan, and it's not like it's in 40K, like, the Chaos Gods are, of course, they're Satan, but they're not called Satan, but they're obviously the demon of hell inspired faction, right?
yeah.
These ones are the literal ones.
Yes,
It's all there.
Beelzebub
They
is
are.
it's a literal faction in the game world. So yes, hell is evil, but you can't just say, but the church is as bad. It's like, well, they can't be as bad.
That's an oxymoron. existentially impossible. You know what I mean?
Or like,
Because once the metaphysical manifestation of everything is evil, no, doesn't matter what you do, you're gonna, you're never going to hold a candle to them.
or unless you're going to Protestant view and say that the church is actually, Satanist.
Yeah, but who
But
cares
that's
what the
not the route
Protestants
that they
think?
went. They went to the route that the Pope actually has direct contact with God, right? God has his own army in Trench Crusade, and that's called the church and the kingdoms
Yeah.
within Christendom. So it's like, so that means they're the good guys, doesn't it?
Whoa, but and you know that they're gonna go with this one, like, what if God bad?
What do you mean, what if God bad? He cast out the devil into hell.
Yeah, I know, but it's a law,
It's not
a trope in
like
these kinds of settings
it's
often go like, oh well, God is also bad. You know what I mean? Like, even if that's an oxymoron too.
I think the only time which it worked it was when in, Doom Eternal. And I forgot what kind of heresy this is from the medieval era, but this is a late or very early church heresy that was brought up, right? And it's the idea that the God of the Old Testament is not the same God of the New Testament.
Yeah, oh shit, I've talked about this. Hold on, give me a second. Manichaeism,
Sure, but the whole point is that within
Catharism.
sure, but the whole point is that this heresy, or at least I depict it this way, or this is how I see it, is the core. I don't want to say, what am I trying to say? What I'm saying is that within the world of Doom, especially Doom Eternal, what I think the Dark Lord is, I think he's meant to be God of the Old Testament. He is the creator, but when it comes to that AI that layer gains sentience and he asks, "Am I the father?" When he asks the professor about that, I think that's meant to be like he's the actual father God that Christianity orbits around, whereas the creator is the God of the Old Testament that would become the Dark Lord. If you see what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. Your Gnosticism. That's what it's called. Gnosticism.
Right. I think that's something they were doing in the world of Doom. Maybe it's not, and I'm looking far into it, but that's how I see it as. And maybe that's some kind of justification you can do to say God bad, at least in this sort of context. But in any other context, no, that doesn't work. And even then, I don't
Yeah,
believe in
but
that. Even then, I don't believe in that heresy. That's
yeah,
why
of
it's called
course you don't,
heresy.
because it's heresy. That's why it's called heresy. Yeah, no, and here's the thing: settings that use kind of the angel versus demon aesthetic often do this. Of they present things as surface level biblical, but in the end they turn it into Manichaeism,
Manichaeism.
Gnosticism. Yeah, this they do for one of two things: either ignorance on what the actual monotheist beliefs entail,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, the minutia, or simply not with the any actual malice behind it, but just to create drama. In monotheism, uh, since God is there's only one God and he's almighty and
Right.
completely perfect and beyond eternal, that sort of things. He is the God in every sense of the word. There's no buts, not ifs.
Yeah, he's
Nothing came
God,
before
capital
him.
G.
Yeah, he's God, capital G. Um, a lot of people feel like that doesn't make for good drama because feel like there are no stakes involved because there's no way to beat God. There's no way that he's at risk or anything. Which I find ridiculous. Just read the Bible. um,
Mm-hmm.
and so they make it Manichaeism, in which the in the side of good is good, but it's imperfect. The angels are either overzealous, or they are too rigid, or too perfectionist. to
Hmm.
counterpoint the demons, which are just plain old evil. But but to create the drama of which, the good guys, even the metaphysical manifestations of good, are not, perfect, so as to make it more dramatic.
I can
Which I
see
think is a
that.
stupid trope, but I think it's a stupid trope of people that, are not creative enough, but that's normally what happens. And I have the feeling that Trench Crusade is going to go that route.
Yeah, and even then, the whole thing where it's like, I think people have this idea that just because something's good, that means they have to be polite. We all know Spawn, and I think this is something they tackled, but I think also Spawn is responsible for some of the slop we get these days. In the
Hmm.
Spawn video game, there's this scene in which Spawn was stopping I don't know his name, but he's called the anti-Spawn. He's basically like Heaven's answer to Spawn, right? And they're doing this thing where they want to blow up Earth in order to stop the forces of hell. It's a long story. But anyways, when Spawn confronts him, he's like, "You call that warfare?" In which the angel Spawn is like, "We have done this before." So what's it called Jericho, is it called Sodom in the Bible? Sodom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sodom, the list is endless. Naming all these cities that in the Old Testament were struck down by God, right? But here's the thing: there's justifications on why they did that, especially in something like Egypt.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just saying,
Yeah, like, yeah. So, yeah, no, I mean by I understand what you mean, and I understand what they're going there with. But here's the thing: um, the people that write these sorts of stories in which, well, oh, heaven is evil because he, they also kill people. It's kind of like stupid because first of all, if you're a god of that's almighty, then life and death are yours to give and take. You know what I mean? Like,
mhm.
that's why murder is bad, because you're pretty much setting yourself up as God to decide who lives and who dies, you know?
Yes,
Um,
because, and also
it's not your
that's
right
the
to
crime of
decide
murder.
that. Yeah, that's a crime of murder. It's not your right to decide that. That's God's to decide that because he is the one who gives life. Ergo, he can take it away. First off, so this idea that, oh well, God kills people in the Bible, God made the life of those people and created them. Like, if he wants to say when their lives end, that's on him.
But I don't
That's
know. Isn't
his
there
choice,
also, yeah, but there's also like the incident where someone just dies naturally. Like, I'm just saying, to say
Yeah,
an accident like car crashes or natural death. But I do
yeah.
understand what you're saying. It's like God decides how life is, and us taking his role of murdering people. I don't want to say God murders people. I'm just saying, yes, I understand what you're saying. It's like you're
We
acting the
use the
place of
word,
God.
yeah, we use the word murder because it's an unlawful killing,
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know what
And
you're saying.
here's the thing, yeah, and here's the thing, uh, it, and a lot of this is seems to be completely under the suggestion that, as you said earlier, oh, because they're the good guys, they need to forgive and hug and kiss everyone they see, and it's like mercy is a gift, not a right. If the biggest question, I think that the first question of if the forces of absolute good walk up to you and decide to execute you, I think the biggest concern shouldn't be, oh, they're actually evil. I think your concerns would be, oh, I am evil.
Like, what have
You know
I done?
what have I done? Because here's the thing, the manifestations of ultimate good, justice is among them. So justice demands punishment for crime. So there's this idea, like you said, that oh, because they're the forces of good, they need to forgive everyone they see. And like forgiveness and mercy are virtues, sure, but forgiveness and mercy are for the people that repent. And for example, that's what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. The people did not repent. Actually, the Bible has a conversation between Abraham and God about this. Like Abraham asked God, "Oh, but what if there's good people in the city?" And God says to Abraham, "And it proceeds down. That's how the conversation proceeds. And he says something along the lines of, "Well, if you find 10 righteous men in the city, I will spare it." You know, and
Mhm.
Abraham looks for righteous men. He finds none, and he starts, reducing the number of righteous people that he needs to find in order for God to spare the city. And God says, "Okay, if you find 5, if you find one righteous man, I will spare the city."
Like, look
And there
at
were
how
none.
many chances
And there were
God's given
none.
to Abraham.
Yeah.
But here's
And
the
there were
thing: at
none.
the end of the day, Sodom just didn't want to.
Yeah. Here's this. Yeah. That I think that's also a subject that I think should be tackled more in stories.
Hmm.
The person that wants to give you justice, that wants to be merciful to you, the recipient of all that, does not want to be helped.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to diverse too much, but this is just quickly. I want to give this all out there. And hopefully maybe they might explore this, and that's Has Been Hotel. Hold on, because it's on the topic of hell and the whole thing of forgiveness, right? All I'm just saying is I want to imagine a scene in which everyone in hell sees that the hotel works and everyone can repent and go to heaven, right? And that second chance is there, but everyone decides, or most of the people there decide, we don't want it.
Yeah.
See what I'm
I
trying to
think
say
I've
there?
said to you. Yeah, yeah. I think I talked to you about this before, but um, most people that claim to have had visions of hell have said that the damned are not screaming for mercy or begging to be saved or released. They're completely consumed by hatred. They're cursing each other, they're cursing their situation, they're cursing God. So the people there are not begging for mercy. The people there are, you know, completely consumed by their own sins. So I don't think it's a question there if they just got a second chance, they would take it. I don't think they would, you know?
It's almost like a thing of where it's like they're their own prisoners. Isn't that the thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's literally like when Hulk, when Bruce Banner dies and he's left in a world where he's the last being to exist. He realizes that if he were to turn back into Banner, he'd be dead as well. And he decides, I'm never going to turn back to Bruce Banner. I'm going to live forever to spite everyone. And then he realizes that he's the last living being in existence, and then he feels lonely. But he's never going to turn back into Bruce because he doesn't want to lose. So
Yeah.
Hulk is in his own hell and he's his own prisoner.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's why the devil's betrayal is so vain, because of his pride.
Yeah. And that
Literally,
would fit on the characterization, honestly.
this is in the Castlevania game in which, this is the Balmont Gabriel, I think that's his name is.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like, you were rather rule with power and might rather than forgiveness and love. This is why you were cast out, O evil one. And the devil
Yeah.
just doesn't care. It's like, it was my divine right to rule. Perhaps even
Yeah,
more.
prisoner of your own pride, basically.
Yeah.
So anyway, wait, we're supposed to be talking about Trench Crusade.
Right, but
uh,
but here's the thing, that's a subject matter when it comes to something like hell and something Trench Crusade we'll have to eventually talk about when it comes to like what is salvation and what is damnation. But I'm pretty sure the creators just don't want to, because it talks about religion and they don't want to be involved with religion. But it's like, guys,
yeah, in
you
their
got
religious war,
yourself
yeah,
involved.
in their setting called Trench Crusade, they don't want to be talk about religion.
You
What a bunch
have
of geniuses.
crusade in your title.
Yeah.
What do you think a crusade was?
Yeah, it's a war of religions. It's an
Yes.
armed pilgrimage.
Yes. Now,
Also, I just want to say that it was the whole thing in which they banned people for vibes or for memes instead of getting excited that they were getting so much attention was the single most stupid thing they could have ever done. Even even out of all the stupid things, We already said they did. Because if you are a small businessman with a project like that needs to just get off the ground in such a niche market, you should be salivating that so many people are interested in your product
Uh,
and that
I,
they're willing to spread the word around.
uh,
Instead, you wanted to police police things, of course, because of politics, because what else? And thus shot yourself in the foot.
and I can
Congratulations,
understand.
idiot.
I can understand not wanting to appeal with certain people that you just don't want to be associated with, like especially when if they're idiots. I'm just saying, but at the same time, you can't really stop them. Like you can't really stop these people from like buying your stuff. That
Also,
you can make all.
I must say that.
Oh, sorry. So what?
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like I'm just saying, you can make all the quotes, all the public speeches you want, but I'm just saying there's still going to be people buying your stuff, and you can't exactly stop that.
Yeah. The businessman that reduces his client pool, it's shooting at himself in the foot. And here's the thing. Oh, we don't want to associate with idiots, so we are going to associate with idiots to own the idiots. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
can get that.
Trench Crusade has become the most toxic fan base, and the thing is not
Mm,
even out.
yeah, it's some people I've discovered it's like it's insufferable. Or at
Yeah.
least the fan base that's like trying to say, this is going to beat the 40K chuds. It's like, you're the most obnoxious person I've ever seen.
Yeah, and we know that. I'm sorry, but there's not enough material there to go even a fifth of what 40K is. Like,
There's not
say
even a
whatever you
novel
want
yet.
about Games Work. Yeah, like say whatever you want about Games Workshop, but this is not a 40K killer in any sense of the
Oh,
word.
no. Oh, no. It's not going to kill 40K anytime soon, guys.
Yeah.
Uh,
And here's the thing. No, sorry. I
Why
do
no
say that a
novels?
lot, right?
Why no novels? Why are there no novels yet? There should be at least 5 novels.
There's not even a game. Well, yet.
Yeah, not even rule book yet. It's like,
We need
where's
to
my lore?
also add.
Where's my
Yeah.
lore?
Also, we need to. We also need to add that Trench Crusade is a skirmish game. It's not even a full-on war game.
So almost like Kill Team.
Yeah, it's exactly like Kill Team.
Oh shit!
It's a
I didn't think
skirmish
of that.
game. It's not even a full-on war game. It's a skirmish game.
Huh? I forgot about that. It's like, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like less models, but it makes for faster gameplay. Yeah, but it's like
it makes
I'm
for
sort
faster
of
gameplay. Yeah.
I was almost thinking about fielding an entire army of New Antioch, but where's my models? Where's my
Yeah.
meat? Where's the meat?
Precisely.
Or maybe it's trying. Or I did it get itself in a situation where it's too big for itself.
Also, should we talk about what we know about the lore so far? Because there's like the thing's not even out, and people are already finding holes in it. You know?
Yeah, definitely. And maybe this can, lead us into the conversation about factions about the game, and we can the more positive stuff we might have towards it.
Sure.
I just want to talk about quick like some of my few favorite factions, and then we can talk about like the holes that exist within their lore and somewhat, right?
Mhm.
I think the most favorite faction for me is New Antioch, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really cool that it's this sort of like, Cadia faction within Trench Crusade. It's like World War One warfare mixed with some like diesel punk because they have like, war machines, war suits. It looks really cool. It does look like advanced World War One technology. Because, whenever I see something like that in some games like Wolfenstein or Captain America, that's something that always satisfies me. I think it's a cool aesthetic. So seeing something like that as an entire faction, I think is very cool for me. And yeah, I really do like how New Antioch in this game is kind of like a beachhead at the gates of hell. I really like that. But what do you think?
Yeah. I would say New Antioch is is one of my favorites too. I mean, they have this knightly aesthetic, which I'm all about.
Mhm.
Although, to be fair, if I actually said which is my favorite faction, I would say the Trench Pilgrims.
Oh
Yeah, with their with their capirotes and their and their flagellant looking the flagellant looking aesthetic. It looks so grim, but at the same time, so they have this aura of sacred suffering, which
Yeah.
I completely dig. So love them, love them.
Yeah, also I really do like this idea that it's like these aren't typically normal soldiers. These are pilgrims that are trying to fight for the once was Holy Land, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, and also yeah, these are you could say an example like this that these people are nuts because of the self-torture stuff.
yeah.
I'm not saying
Also,
that you are nuts for doing something like that, but I'm just saying is that within the presentation and world of Trench Crusade and how messed up everything has become, yeah, I imagine some people might become nuts from everything.
yeah. I mean, considering that there's a Hellgate in the Levant, I think being nuts is justifiable in a way.
I'm just thinking of like Space King, in which the coagulators, in which even one of the soldiers is like, yeah, I don't think we should go with these guys. They're nuts. I imagine something like that for the trench pilgrims.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, pretty much.
yeah, maybe we shouldn't let these guys come with us to New Antioch. They're fucking nuts.
Definitely. Also, the Sultanate of the Iron Wall. Like
Yes,
for me
I like
saying
that.
this, it looks awesome, and you know that for me saying that, that's quite an achievement.
Yeah, I'm just saying for something it is the Islamic faction within Trench Crusade, and I gotta say, I think it has more creativity and effort put into it than Araby and Warhammer Fantasy. Because at least these guys don't have like flying carpets as artilleries. And
Yeah, fair enough.
I really also do like this whole idea that they use alchemy to create these like artificial monsters. They're not demons, but they're like creations out of alchemy, and I find that to be really cool, especially when you see
Yeah,
like the
they're kind of like one step away from black magic.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that isn't that the whole thing of like alchemy. It's almost like it's not technically magic. It is a sort of like
Science.
pseudo chemistry. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But with
It's
some
like a mystical chemistry, let's call it.
right, and that's something I find pretty interesting, and I especially find cool like the brazen bull for the Iron
Yeah.
Sultanates. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it looks brutal and disgusting. I like it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, like and honestly, like I think that's half the factions already. I think we're only missing the hell factions.
Yeah. There's
Um
also the typical heretic legions. They're the anti New Antioch. They're the Trent soldiers, but they're more influenced from hell. And they have things like
yeah.
the artillery witch, which is I think is pretty cool. As the name implies, it's like a witch that summons artillery bombs. That's pretty interesting. Like
Yeah.
World War One warfare mixed with like some evil mysticism stuff. I like that.
Yeah. Hmm. Definitely. The
Though,
Court of the Serpent, the
oh
which
yeah,
is,
that's
the
like full on like I don't want to say chaos demons, but they're almost because demons don't can't technically enter the battlefield in this world,
yeah.
but they are like chaos mutants. The army, I like that.
Yes.
And but this is also my favorite faction, right? The Black Grail, and that's kind of like the
Yeah,
Beelzebub
also
army.
buff. Hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely like the Nurgle army, but also at the same time they include some. But this time around, it's like centered around Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. So you see things
Yeah.
like tumors. You see like disgusting body horror mixed with plague. That black
Yeah.
plague with this our faction. That's pretty cool. If they were to
Yes.
expand on that, I want to see something like pigs and the sin of gluttony emphasized with something like Beelzebub, because I think that'd be opens up a lot of opportunities for doing like body horror mixed with gluttony.
Yeah. It seems like a very good idea. Like I would like to see what they come up with, at least artistically.
Hmm. But
Oh.
hmm?
No, sorry. Go ahead.
But we were also talking about holes in a saying, and this is something we were actually brought up earlier for something that's supposed to be apocalyptic. And I'll show a map to the audience, of course. Um, you've seen the world map of Trench Crusade, yeah?
Yes.
Right.
It's a mess. Like, it's a
Yeah.
mess. Like, the people that made this really didn't think this through for more than one reason. Like, you can tell, like, these people don't know anything about history. They don't know anything about neither the Crusades nor the medieval period or even World War One. Anything of the sort.
Like
It's
I'll
a
pull up the map for
mess.
you right now on Discord just to help for reference
Yeah.
too, if we in case we need it. Um, of course, it's up for the audience too right now. But yeah, seeing something like the forces of hell and what territory they have in the world, it's like it's very small.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like almost non-existent. Like it doesn't feel that apocalyptic. It just feels like the Turks had more territory by the late Middle Ages.
oh man, really? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. And it's like for something that's supposed to be like the forces of hell, it's like I think Doom had like more danger compared to Trench Crusade. It's like, guys, what happened?
Yeah, they really didn't think this through.
It
Like
looks pretty.
and
It looks pretty,
it
but at the
looks
same
pretty. Yeah, it looks
but here's the thing, it looks pretty, but it's kind of like getting a pie and finding out the filling is jam.
basically. I mean, and there's details here that do not make much sense. Like what? Like for example, first of all, okay. First of all, and the first thing that I noticed is like for a company that went completely butthurt over people having wives. They sure love to offend the Armenians because once again in this timeline the Armenians get most of the land taken by hell and by Muslims again.
So I don't understand the
Like
Armenian thing. So what happened?
don't know, no, you never heard of the Armenian genocide?
I've heard. I didn't look too much into it. So what exactly
Yeah,
happened?
well, it's kind of like the first modern genocide, so I, recommend that you
Ooh,
look at it. But essentially, most of the Armenians are kind of like the world's forgotten, persecuted minority that
ooh.
no one remembers because they had everything happen to them. They had their land
Oh, was
taken. They
this with
have
Martin
been
Turkey?
brutalized.
Was this with
Yeah,
Martin Turkey?
yeah, and
Ooh,
and and the thing is, I love that the ones in the faction that takes most of Armenia is the Muslims rather than the hell demons, and I'm
what do you
like,
mean by that,
oh my,
guys? What do you mean
because
by that?
most of Armenia in the map is taken by the Iron Wall of the Sultanate.
Yeah, I know that. It's like Trench Crusade. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, what did they mean by this? I thought you were a progressive, inclusive company.
But here's the thing too, if this was kind of like realistic and the forces of hell like took almost all of Africa, most of East Asia and all of Siberia, and they left like the Iron Sultanates to be like this iron walled nation against the forces of hell in all the Middle East. They can't make contact with like Europe and such. And if Europe itself, like all of Central Europe is taken by hell and Ireland is taken, and all of Christendom is like the last bastion of humanity against the forces of hell within Africa, Asia, and all this stuff. It's like, what do you mean by that? What would you mean by that?
Yeah, yeah. Pretty much.
And hell taking Siberia and invading what is called the Principality of Kiev. It's like, what do you mean by that? But then again, Warhammer Fantasy has the exact same thing with Kislev.
Yeah, pretty much. I think they wanted to, not cause another controversy, I would say.
But you know what?
I think
Here's the
they got
thing. I do like, there's medieval kingdoms that exist now in 1914 that I find interesting. But at the same time, too, it's like, why hasn't hell taken more land though?
yeah, that's one. Another thing that I noticed is that in their attempt to make it look medieval, which, I love medieval stuff. I studied medieval history, so that I dig that. For some reason, in the coast of the Black Sea in Crimea, there are Scythians.
Scythians?
Yeah, you can see it right over Georgia.
I don't know what that means. What's that?
Like up the Iron Wall, like under the Golden Knight banner.
Yeah, I can see the Iron Wall. I see the map before me, but it's like, what do you mean by what you just said? Like the
Oh,
people.
you don't know? Okay, so the Scythians are a Bronze Age cult. Well, a Bronze Age to Classical Age culture of warrior horseback nomads.
Okay,
And that's the want to know what the problem is?
what's the problem?
The problem is that if the timeline alteration occurred in 1099, which is the year the First Crusade ended, there were no more Scythians. Scythians did no longer exist. So how the
Ooh.
hell are they here?
Ooh,
You know?
I see. or and yeah, okay. It's like, oops. Or like, how does modern day Ireland and Wales and Scotland exist in Britannia?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or why is there modern day Finland and Sweden? Shouldn't like Finland be Sweden still, like the Swedish
Yeah.
Empire?
Why Russia is called the Sodom of Novgorod?
Why? Why is that an issue?
Yeah, because Novgorod was one of. Look, no, I'm just being. I'm just. I'm just cherry picking, but yeah, like okay, we can understand to some degree that it's still it's a fantasy.
No, I mean, I
setting,
don't
so,
get the. No, I mean, I don't get the Novgorod thing. That's like, I don't get that.
yeah, like I'm not that well versed in Russian history, but it seems kind of like very arbitrarily renamed it just not to use the word Russia because Russia bad right now,
Well, I mean, yeah, they're still terrorists, but or at least the Russian government.
Yes, they are. Like I'm not arguing that, but I'm just kind of like it seems like I don't know. It seems like very, very petty that they cannot even get mentioned.
Like there's Kingdom of Perm
in a map.
Like I can see here Kingdom of Perm, right? But it's like still, I think forces of Hells have taken all of Russia, but at the same time, too, do you not want to offend Russians as well?
Yeah, apparently.
And
who knows
you can
at
do
this point.
And we have Principality of Kiev, we have the what is it called, Lithuanian, Polish. What's that nation called again?
Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth.
Right. Would you be all right if those things were still existed in the context of like Trench Crusade?
Yeah. Another, yeah, in my opinion, like most of the Russia should have been taken by hell.
But we can still have something like what's called Moscow. That's a city.
Which one?
I think it was called Moscow. That's a city or medieval city within Russia, or what would be modern day Russia.
Muscovy. Yeah, Muscovy. Yeah. Well, that eventually would become Moscow. But
noble houses of the Rus.
Of the Rus, yeah.
So it's Lehman Russ. Lehman Rush is Russian. He's Lehman of the Rush, Space Wolves. So wouldn't that mean like some parts of Space Wolves are also part Russian by that name?
Well, to be fair, yeah, like some members of the Rus, invited Viking leaders to become their kings. That's where the connection is.
Right.
Okay, like my point here is that I mean the map's not bad, but
it looks pretty, but
it looks pretty, but some of the details are kind of like what the actual hell, or like what? Why are the Scythians here? Why did you fuck over the Armenians again? And why is there a kingdom of Numidia? Who built that? Like I understand it's a fantasy, so things can be different, but can you explain that one? That bit? Because this is a Christian kingdom. This is a Christian kingdom.
And here's the thing: we can do something like Trench Crusade. They have a Christian kingdom within Northern Africa that can exist, but you have to make a reason why it exists.
Yeah.
Like I'm just saying, for world building, you got to give like, sensibility or, believability why these things exist.
Yeah. Internal consistency, we like to call them. So as to not interfere with my suspension of disbelief. And you want to know the biggest hole in Trench Crusade?
What's the hole? Besides
The
the portal
whole,
of hell.
yeah. According to the people that made this, the Knights Templar open a portal to hell, which
Right.
first, before I talked about this, I just want to say this bullshit about the Knight Templars are secretly heretics is complete and utter
They were
bullshit. And
deceived.
I
They were
want,
deceived in Trench Crusade. Let's
yeah, they
keep
were,
that in
yeah,
mind.
yeah, but it's still, I hate that people use that as a trope because it was a sham trial. So,
It was.
spit on the memory of the poor fellow soldiers of Christ in the temple.
Because
So fuck that.
for the audience who don't know, the Knights Templar were messed over by the French king who accused them of being devil worshippers. That way, he didn't have to pay his taxes towards the Knights Templar, in which they were then persecuted. And this is where the whole thing of Baphomet existed. Like, they came to believe that this manifestation of the devil that they worship, named Baphomet, is, justification why we should persecute the Knights Templar.
Yeah.
But
but do you want to know the problem?
What's the problem?
The problem is that according to that, the result of the First Crusade, that the Knights Templar open a portal to hell, but there's a tiny bit problem with that. The Knights Templar did not exist by the end of the First Crusade.
What? Wait, they didn't?
Yeah, the Knights Templar. No, the Knights Templar came after the First Crusade, not
Oh.
before.
Oh,
So how the hell
I didn't
the
know that.
Knight
I didn't know
Templars
this.
exist?
I didn't know this myself. I just thought I just
you know
assumed,
what I mean?
I just assumed, but yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It was like medieval kingdoms going into Jerusalem. It wasn't just Knights Templar. But then again, you just said they didn't exist.
Yeah, they didn't exist yet. So how the hell were they involved?
What,
you see the problem now?
I see the problem, but it's like, wait, but then again, maybe in context, maybe they did this after the First Crusade.
Yeah, but they're very vague about it, and they say that, the primer says that by the tail end of the First Crusade, which another example of a Redditors going, oh, like Crusade's still bad, but whatever. But the primer of the lore says by the end of the First Crusade, and by the end of the First Crusade, there were no Knight Templars yet.
So when did they exist?
The Knights Templar, let me remember the date because I haven't researched this in a while. Hold on.
Right, and I do want to say this too, and because for the audience, the Knights Templar still exists up to here, 1914 in Trench Crusade. But here's the thing: if you're joining the Knights Templar, you have to be sure you die in warfare, because if you don't, if you die from sickness or anything else besides fighting the forces of hell, then what happens is that you're dragged into hell. Because what happened is that when you join the Knights Templar, the church, as punishment for what the Knights Templar have done in the First Crusade, quote unquote, they etch these runes into your organs and into your bones that if you were to die outside of warfare, then you get dragged into hell as punishment. And it's like, okay, I'm mixed about that. It's like, that sounds pretty, grim and dark and metal. But at the same time, too, it's like, wouldn't that be taking away their free will? Or, here's the thing. If that happens, why would anyone want to join the Knights Templar if that's what's going to happen if you die?
Yeah. So the Knights Templar, I remembered now. The Knights Templar were founded in 1118.
And how long is that after?
19 years after the First Crusade ended.
Okay. Maybe if they're vain, maybe it's that late after the First Crusade, but it's like, then when did the Second Crusade start?
Yeah. The Second Crusade. Well, the Second Crusade started later than that. So, yeah. So what I mean is there are no Knights Templar by 1099.
Right, and from that lore bit of what I told you about the Knights Templar that exists now in Trench Crusade, what do you think about that? Like, all the whole thing about them being etched with runes that if they were to die outside of war, they get dragged into hell. It's
That's kind of stupid because their sins would be enough for them to get dragged into hell. They don't need extra help.
Yeah, that's the thing. And this is something the church emphasizes too. You're not dragged into hell against your will.
Yeah, you walk into it
It's
in a
like
way.
it's like all these visions where people are shown, hell and the horrors within it. At the same time, after the visions, especially after the whole lay Fatima thing, the Virgin Mary tells the children that's because some of these souls don't have people praying for them. And here's a prayer that you can do to help people to lead them all into heaven, especially those in most need of thy mercy. That's an actual lay Fatima prayer. And it's like that is emphasizing that God wants everyone into heaven. He doesn't force you into there.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of like very, that's just borderline on, anti-Christian by that point. um,
It's like using runes to force people into hell. What do you
yeah,
mean
that
by that?
sounds like that sounds like black magic.
And the only justification I can see why that would exist if you're joining the Knights Templar out of punishment.
Yeah.
Y-
Here's the thing: if they are like, I must die in battle to atone for my sins. That's okay. In a way, that's kind of like the very, well, not the idea behind a crusade per se, but there is atonement through combat.
mhm,
Atonement through military service, through by subjecting yourself to the suffering and hardships of the military campaign. Uh, under spiritual rules.
mhm.
But yeah, that seems like incredibly unnecessary. I think their shame would be enough.
Right. Yeah. And also, I want to end on this note because it's interesting, and this is something I don't think Trench Crusade has covered yet. Um, do Jews exist in Trench Crusade? That no,
That's a very good
no,
question.
no. That's a good question. It's like we have Christianity, the army, we have Islam, the army, right? And that's cool. I'm curious though, where do the Jews stand?
uh,
I'm just curious about this, guys. I'm curious. Do Jews not exist in
yeah,
Trench Crusade?
yeah, that's a good question. Um, well, the Jews would have been, by that time would have been completely spread around the world.
Hmm.
So uh, I don't think they would have had enough numbers in each individual homeland to, kind of form their own faction, but maybe they could exist as a special military unit consisting of only Jews. Who knows? Something like that. I don't know.
I think there's something like that, and we were talking about this on the Discord ones. They were called Hebrew Knights, a upcoming faction
Okay,
they want to do.
that's a stupid name. Like
It's a
Knights is a
stupid name.
Christian concept. Yeah, it's a Christian concept. Give them another name.
It is, and isn't it also a thing that deliberately calling a Jew Hebrew derogatory?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't really remember.
I
When
did,
I say Hebrew, like I'm just saying. I actually I don't know about that one, to be honest.
yeah, because here's the thing: when you say Hebrew, you're referring to people within the Old Testament, right? And that's what everyone's going to think. But the thing is that, and maybe you can help me out with this, right? When it comes to history, um, not all Hebrews would become Jews. Because
Mhm.
isn't that the whole idea about Jews is that they are successors or people of Judea?
Yeah, technically, yes.
Like, do you know much on that history?
Honestly, not that much. Like I'm embarrassed to say, but not specifics, only generals.
Right. It's like there's a reason why we say Jesus was Jewish and not Hebrew. You see what I'm trying to say?
Oh, okay. Now, okay. Now I understand what you mean.
Right, because Judah or Judea is a region within Jerusalem, and yeah, that's where that's where a bunch of the Hebrews were,
Well,
or
a
a
region in the Holy Land.
it's a region of the Holy Land, and the Hebrews from that land would become Jews, but not all Hebrews would become Jews. Like all Jews are
Right.
Hebrews, but not all Hebrews are Jews. If that makes sense.
Yes.
But then again, we will have to really look into that if we were to do a separate podcast about like the Old Testament and how that would translate into the New. But at the same time too, it's like, yeah, Hebrew Night sounds dumb. You couldn't do something like Scions of Judea.
Yeah, yeah. I think that sounds far more, thematic. How about the Swords of Zion?
And what's Zion referencing again?
Zion is another name for Jerusalem.
Okay. But then again, it's like if they were to do something like that, wouldn't they be called Zionists because of everything going on? It's like you want to appeal to everyone, but also you don't want to appeal to everyone. It's like, do you satisfy one crowd or another crowd?
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Like, well, to be specific, Zion was initially the name of the Jebusian fortress conquered by King David, which was located in the actual Jerusalem.
Okay.
So the fortress is kind of like on a hill on the southeastern side of Jerusalem, and it's called Mount Zion. So it's kind
Huh.
of like
Oh, is
an
that why?
alternate name for Zion. That's why you hear it referenced a lot in the Old Testament, like, "Oh, we remember Zion," you know?
Oh, I didn't know that's where the word came from.
Yeah, that's where it came from.
Oh, okay, interesting. But yeah, still, it's like, is because it would be interesting, I guess, that there would be like a Jewish faction within Trench Crusade. It's like, well, if you have Christianity and you have Islam, it's like, why not do the third monotheistic Abrahamic religion?
Yeah, yeah, fair
But then,
enough.
but
I
then
would say.
again, I guess within context that they were pretty scared in this history, it's like they wouldn't probably have the numbers to be a, hard faction on their own or have enough material, I guess you could say, when compared to like say the Iron Sultanates. But I don't know, it is a thought experiment. It's like I think it would be cool to see like Trench Crusade's version of the Golem.
Yeah, that would be cool. Like that would be a cool concept, I would say.
Mhm. But yeah, as you can see, we have a love-hate sort of relationship with Trench Crusade. I personally might give it a few more chances. Maybe I'll pick up a model here and there if, depending how cost and shipping is. I don't ever see myself 3D printing this stuff because 3D printing is more toxic than brake dust. But no, actually, I'm printing 3D printing stuff is more toxic than brake dust. Just letting you know.
Oh, really? I thought you were joking.
No, it's like it's pretty toxic. Wear a mask. But
Oh, okay. Thanks for the heads up.
right. But I do wish the best for Trench Crusade if it is going forward. If it does go forward on trying to be a a competition towards 40K. I really do wish for it the best. I really do wish there's going to be like cool novels or stuff like that coming out. I want it to succeed, to give like Kickstarter campaigns, the hope that they can, compete in the market like this. But you got to get your act together.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not as optimistic as you, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. I
Okay.
don't know if I'm just pessimistic or I'm just a vindictive asshole. But honestly, I think like the setting has too many um foundational flaws in it to be
Okay.
sustainable long term. Honestly, but look, I don't. I'm mixed. Part of me wants them to fail just to spite them, but
Like I'm a spiteful person too.
another part of me is saying, don't be an asshole. But another part of me is saying, well, there are assholes to you, you know.
And you know what?
So
Like I'll tell you, man, I can be spiteful because I'm trying to paint my kill team of Vespits just be spiteful towards you with your kill team of Kriegers.
yeah, okay, fair enough.
Spite is a good motivator. I'm just saying.
Why is a good motivator? I'm gonna write that on the wall somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But really do wish for it the best. But maybe they'll doom themselves, like seeing that high school friend of yours years later, only to find out he's addicted to crack. He's a cracked homeless man.
Nah, I hope that at least they can get their act together, but I'm not holding my breath for it.
All right. Hopefully, it's not a poisoned well, but they gotta stop pouring that poison into the well.
Yeah.
But, anyways, I think that concludes our episode on Trench Crusade. I really had fun. And again, I wish for it the best, but they got to get their act together. But I had my fun talking about Trench Crusade. I've been wanting to talk about this forever. So thank you, Hubrecht, for coming onto the show. I had my fun, and I'll see you all again next time with a brand new episode. I'll see you around, guys.